People should know that there is no single verse in the Quran which asks us to face any direction or location when we are performing the Salat. There is no such thing in the Quran. There is no single verse in the Quran whereby God says when you are doing Salat, you have to face the Kaaba, you have to face the Qibla, you have to face the Makkah, you have to... No, it doesn't exist. No single verse in the Quran tells you to do that. Now, the verse which has been twisted and misquoted and misinterpreted, it is chapter 2, verse 144, when God was instructing the prophet that we have seen you turning your face around the sky, so we are going to assign a Qibla to which you will be pleased. So turn your face towards what? The sacred masjid. It has nothing to do with Salat. God didn't say, and when you are performing your Salat or you are establishing the Salat, turn your face to the Masjid al-Haram. No. So don't twist the words of God out of context. Let God himself explain the words to us. Because the book on its own is tibyana likulli shay'in. It's a clarification for all things. Good. So when you go to chapter 2, verse 115, let's see this concept first. To understand, even if somebody is saying, oh, you have to turn your face towards a Masjid al-Haram or this to pray, tell him, chapter 2, verse 115. Chapter 2, verse 115. Before you read this verse, ask him, the Salat, who am I doing it for? He will say, God. Then you ask him, who am I seeking for in my Salat? He will say, God. So if that is the case, God says, now, then you ask the person, if I'm doing the Salat to God and I'm seeking God in my Salat, right? Why am I to face an object, to face a stone, or to face a location, to face a place? Is God not everywhere? He will tell you yes. So then you ask him, who said I should face the Kaaba to pray, or to face any mosque to do Salat, or to face any direction to Salat? They cannot answer you. Now, if it is God we are seeking for, the answer can be found here. Chapter 2, verse 115. Salam tikas. Chapter 2, verse 115. If it is God you are seeking for in your Salat, God says, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. Then he says, فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا. Then he says, فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. And to God belongs the east and the west. Both the east and the west belongs to God. So God says, so wherever you turn, tawallu, when you turn, wherever you turn, right? There is the countenance of God. There is the face of God. There is the attention of God there. Wherever you are seeking God, God is there. Right? Then he says, indeed, God is encompassing and omniscient. Now, this is the answer you give anybody who tells you have to face a direction to do Salat. There's nothing like that in the Quran. God never said you should face a direction to establish Salat. He never said that. That concept is not from God and it's not from the Quran. Right? Good. Now, so people will say, oh, why am I seeking the countenance of God? And where did God say I should invoke him, calling, facing? Yes, if you are turning wherever you are turning, God says wherever you turn. Because you can't see God with your naked eye. So of course, obviously, you have to turn to some location. But it doesn't mean there's a physical, like a fixed position whereby I have to face the corner of my house or I have to face here. No, if I don't face here, God is not talking to me. No. So this is the answer. Chapter 6, verse 52. Surah Al-An'am. Then we go to verse 52. Let's see what God says in that context. Exactly, Muqtabul is saying, source of ritual has to be from the Quran. It cannot be from the Hadith. Yes, I agree. Everything has to be from the Quran, not outside the Quran. Right? So when you go to chapter 6, verse 52, this is what God says concerning people who invoke him, seeking his countenance, seeking his attention, seeking his face. This is what God says. He says, وَلَا تَتُرِدِ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاءَةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Listen what God says. And do not dismiss. He's talking to the Prophet ﷺ at his time. Do not dismiss. When we say tatrudi, he's talking to the Prophet. That is tardi, to dismiss somebody. Do not dismiss those who invoke invoke their Lord in the morning and evening, seeking his countenance, seeking his attention, seeking his face. Right? This is metaphorical. Seeking his attention. Do not dismiss such people. When you are invoking God, seeking the attention of God, or seeking God himself, you can turn wherever you want to face and call on God. It doesn't matter. So that is exactly what he says in chapter 2, verse 115. Both the east, Mashriq wal Maghrib, belongs to God. So wherever you turn, there is the countenance of God. There is the attention of God there. It doesn't matter where you face. There is nothing like facing Masjid al-Haram to pray. There is nothing like facing Mecca. There is nothing like facing Kaaba to do Salat. No, no. Yeah, Salam ala Jahat Mahmud. Now, I'm only breaking down this concept so that you understand concerning Salat. Now, I'm moving down the issue of Salat so that we get. Now, like I started, I told you Salat is a ritual, right? It is a ritual. For anybody who tell you Salat is not a ritual, just ask them the meaning of a ritual, to define the word ritual to you. After they define it, tell them, Salat started since the time of the prophet. Abraham did it, Moses did it, Ishmael did it, Jesus did it, whoever did it, right? So since by that alone, that is a ritual. It has to keep going. It's a customary observance. Apart from that, why are there specific regulations that I need to follow for Salat? Why can't I do Salat without washing? Ask such person that question. That washing alone is a ritual, because if I have to do that washing to come to the Salat, that becomes a ritual. So which means every Salat I will do every day, I need to wash. That is a ritual by definition. And the word, if they tell you the word ritual cannot be found in the Quran, ask them, chapter 5 verse 2, God mentions sha'aira in plural form, rituals. Ask them to translate that word and find the root word for you. And then go deep down and tell you the meaning of that word, sha'aira. For anybody who tells you there is no ritual in Islam. Since Salat is a ritual, it has to do with standing. We stand up in Salat. It's a must. If there is always option if you cannot stand. I'll show you the options at the end of this lecture, right? But if you are doing Salat, you need to stand. So some people can say, oh, what if I cannot stand? That's an exemption. There's always exception for everything. So now, why do we stand in Salat? Why do we have to stand? Did it start from us? No. Who did it start from? The Prophet. So let's check the example. First of all, the word qa'ima in the Quran, let's go and see how it has been used by God before we go to understand whether qa'ima is supposed to be done in Salat. So qa'ima, that is the first posture of when you are establishing Salat. When you stand, that is the first posture you use when you are about to start your Salat, right? So now let's go to the Salat. Why do we stand in the Salat? Is it a new thing? Or for people who are saying it's following closely, it has nothing to do with standing, it has nothing to do, okay, no problem. Let's examine the verses. Chapter 3 verse 39. We can see Zechariah alayhi salam was standing in Salat. Chapter 3 verse 39. He was standing in his Salat. And let's go and see which word was used. This qa'ima or qa'imatun, you see it. If it's a female qa'imatun, qa'imatan, if it's a male qa'iman, we are going to see. Chapter 3 verse 39, let's see what it says. That is Suratul Ali Imran verse 39. God says, فَنَادَتُهُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَهُوَ قَائِمٌ يُصَلِّي فِي الْمِحْرَابِ فَنَادَتُهُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَهُوَ قَائِمٌ يُصَلِّي فِي الْمِحْرَابِ. What does the verse mean? The angels summoned him, or they called him whilst he was standing. Qa'imun. He was standing. Yusalli, in prayer. Now this yusalli, the word is a verb. He was praying. He was standing in prayer. Understand? That is yusalli, to stand whilst doing something. So qa'imun, he was standing in what? His salah. The word salla or salli, that is a verb being used in the Quran. That is a verb. Right? Now, Fil mihrab. The word mihrab is a sanctum. It's a chamber where you call on God. So he, Zechariah alayhi salam, he went to his sanctum, his chamber, and he was standing in his salah. This is a physical act. It's a ritual he was doing. Remember, chapter 3 verse 38 is telling you that he invoked of God. He told God to give him a son. Chapter 3 verse 38. هنالك دعا زكريا ربه قال ربي هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة إنك سميع الدعاء. So in his salat, he used his salat to invoke, call on God whilst he was standing in his salat. So the word qa'imun yusalli, standing in prayer. He was standing in that ritual, act of ritual, and calling God. So we see the act of standing in the salat, right? Apart from him, I take you to another example. Chapter 62 verse 11, Surah Al-Jumu'ah. Now when you read the context from verse 9, it's talking about salat. Does it have to do with standing or not? Yes, it has to do. So let's check the context. Chapter 62 verse 9 to verse 11. Remember, chapter 62 verse 9 is telling you that, oh, you who believe, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu iza nudiya, when you are summoned to the salat. Listen carefully. So when you read by context, verse 10 tells you, فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةِ, when the salat is concluded, it has a finishing part. The following closely group will tell you salat does not end. They tell you it doesn't end. Look, any man in his common sense or any woman in a common sense knows that when something can start, it can end. So far as it has a beginning, it has an end. Do you get my point? When God says, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا, chapter 4 verse 103. Indeed, the salat upon the believers, the times have been decreed. They have decreed times, written times. The word kitaban comes from the word kataba. Kataba means to write. Now, somebody who writes, we say katib. Katib, somebody who writes. So the word kitab, it is something which has been written down. So when we say mawkuta, it is the plural form of what? Wakat. That is time. Wakat. Now this time, mawkuta in plural for it is timing God has given us, which is written in the Quran. Now an ignorant person will tell you the times for salat was only for the prophet at the time of the messenger. That is invalid. Because chapter 33 verse 21 is telling you, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. He's telling you, you can find a good example from the messenger of God. So if I've seen the messenger of God establishing a salat at this time, what stopped you, the ignorant person, from doing the same at that time? And you say, no. Oh, the time is only for the prophet. It has nothing to do with us. Are you okay? Chapter 62 verse 9. So the salat, if you are invited to the salat, then go and leave your sale and go, right? Now, chapter 62 verse 10 is telling you the salat has an ending part. Because since you left your sale to go to the salat, it must end. Then you go back and do your thing. But during the salat, since God has now given them it can end, then you go. During the salat, chapter 62 verse 11, this is what God says. وَإِذَا رَأَوْا تِجَارَةً أَوْ لَهْوًا. Then he says what? انفدوا إليها وتركوك قائما. Do you see the context there? Then God says, "Kul ma inda Allahi khayrun min Allah wa min at-tijar, wallahu khayrun raziki." Now the context of chapter 62 verse 11 is telling you something is going on in that salat. God says, those people who are supposed to establish salat with the prophet, when they see ra'au is a plural form for people. Ra'au, when they see tijaratan, business going on, awlahwan or entertainment going on, wa infadu ilayha, they rush to it. Wa tarakuka qa'iman, then they leave you standing. Are you telling me salat has nothing to do with the physical ritual standing? Or you are just ignorant on the Quran? That is qa'iman there. The same Qa'iman Zechariah was doing in chapter 3 verse 39. He was standing in Salah. The same standing again, Muhammad alayhi salam was here standing. And the people left him to go and do their things. Even though they know the Salat has the beginning time and the ending time, it will end. So why don't you wait, let it end and go and do your business and your thing. Good. Apart from that, chapter 4 verse 102, to show you that Muhammad, when he was establishing the Salat, he stood before he established the Salat, because the Salat starts with the standing posture. So to show you that it starts with standing posture, I take you to chapter 4 verse 102. Chapter 4 verse 102. Let's see what God instructed Muhammad alayhi salam to do in the Salat. God told him, فَإِذَا كُنْتَ فِيهِمْ. God is talking to Muhammad alayhi salam. Then he says, فَأَقَمْتَ لَهُمُ الصَّلَاةَ فَلْتَقُمْ طَائِفَةٌ مِّنْهُمْ مَعَكَ. Please, if you don't study Arabic, don't deal with the Quran. And go and put following closely anywhere. Please. وَإِذَا كُنْتَ فِيهِمْ. When you, Muhammad alayhi salam, when you are among them, فَأَقَمْتَ لَهُمُ الصَّلَاةَ. Then establish the Salat for them. فَلْتَقُمْ. The word taqum. Let the following closely people come and explain to her. What does the taqum here mean? Let a faction among them stand with you. Because chapter 62 verse 11 shows you clearly that they were supposed to stand with him, but they left him and went to their business and their entertainment. So Salat starts with standing. That is what God instructed the prophet to do here. To stand first of all. You are in front of God. Even on the day of judgment, do you know we will stand in front of God? Chapter 83 verse 6. يَوْمَ يَقُومُ النَّاسُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Chapter 83 verse 6. On the day of judgment, we will stand again in front of God. Let the following closely people translate this one to, let's see. They will say, we are flying in front of him. I know that they will twist the meaning right now and say they are flying. It doesn't mean, they will tell you it doesn't mean, it's metaphorical. No problem. Now, so we can see physically that it has to do with standing in Salat. It's a ritual. You have to stand. If Prophet Muhammad can stand in his Salat, if Prophet Zechariah can stand in his Salat, who are you to say no? Then it means you are not a believer. Because وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. And they are not believers. So just saying verbally, oh, I'm a believer in the Quran, I follow the Quran, you are lying to yourself. Your actions don't show it. When you are being told the truth, look at how you come attacking, insulting people. What shows you are a believer? Huh? Good. So chapter 2 verse 238. These same people will take it out of context and they tell you the Salat mentioned there has nothing to do with Salat, prayer. They will say, no. Look at the context. It's talking about divorce. Oh my God. Can't you study the Quran and see that God, when he starts a statement, he doesn't finish it. He jumps to another chapter and go and finish it. Or do you think the book is a storybook written by a human being? Then when he starts something, he has to finish it there? Go to Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 183. Start reading to 185. It was talking about the Ramadan, the Siyam. But exactly 186, it started talking about supplication. What has supplication got to do with fasting? We know supplication has to do with Salat, right? But go and see where God put supplication there. If my servant asks you about him, tell them I am near. I answer the supplication of a supplicant when he supplicates to me, when he invokes me. Then exactly 187, it continues talking about fasting again. Do you see how God speaks? So if you don't use your right senses and you think because the supplication has been mentioned in between fasting, then that word supplication doesn't mean supplication again. Oh, it means swimming. Yeah, these people can tell you that. You see? Then they will take you to chapter 2, verse 238. Even though God says, Hafizu ala salawat, he mentioned a definite article. In Arabic, we say Adatul Tarif. When something is definite, the meaning does not change. If I tell you, have you seen the sun? You cannot tell me it is the water. Do you get my point? If I say, have you seen the sun? So the moment I use the word the, it's a definite thing. You can't change the meaning. If I say, have you seen my book? The book. The moment I say the book, you can't change the meaning. Even if we are talking about Lionel Messi or Maradona, you know the book. Because which means that word there qualifies what I'm telling you. You don't have to bring a new meaning unless if you are ignorant. Then you tell me salat means following closely. Again. Simple. So Hafizu ala salawat was salatul wusta is still talking about the salat. Check it. Study Arabic. Check the adult tarif. Come to English. Definite article. It is a determiner which helps you to find the specificity of a word or of something. That is why we call it definite article. So when God is talking in chapter 2, verse 238 about salat, if you read upwards, it is talking about divorce. Divorce has nothing to do with salat. So just because God mentioned the salat beneath that verse doesn't mean he's still talking about divorce. Use your reasoning. I can be talking to you about football, but while we are talking about football, I can ask you, hey, where is the book? Have you seen the book? Give me the book. So does that mean the book also means football? Come on. Who is teaching these people? So chapter 2 verse 238, when God says Hafizu ala salawat was salatul wusta, then he says waqumu lillahi qanitin, then stand before God obediently, or stand for God obediently. So the word kumu is there in plural form. You all stand obediently. You don't go and stand anyhow, like you're even in front of your boss who employed you. Can you go and stand anyhow? You stand with respect. So how much more God? So you stand, وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. Then I will explain to you later, 239, if you cannot stand, let's say you are sick, let's say you fear, let's say you are in distress, I will show you how to do the salat without standing. Good.